You will struggle for something. That much is not optional. What is optional is the kind of struggle you choose and what you allow it to build in you. Every life extracts a price. The man who avoids discipline today pays a heavier price tomorrow in the form of debts he cannot explain and habits he cannot break. The man who accepts discipline today pays a smaller price now in the form of delayed comfort. The fearful man pays in opportunities he never took. The bold man pays in the discomfort of not knowing how things will turn out. There is no version of life where nothing is owed. So the real question is not, how do I escape the bill? The real question is, what am I willing to buy with it? Ask that question honestly, and something shifts. Most people spend their years chasing an existence with no resistance in it, a career with no risk, a marriage with no friction, a goal with no waiting, a future with no uncertainty. When the world declines to provide any of that, they conclude something has broken. Nothing has broken. Resistance was never the malfunction. Resistance is the mechanism. A muscle only grows because it works against something heavier than itself. Judgment only sharpens because it is forced to decide before all the facts are in. Character only solidifies because at some point, doing the right thing costs you something you wanted. You do not get strong by engineering a life that never tests you. You get strong by learning what to do with the test. Struggle on its own teaches nothing. Plenty of people carry the same weight for 20 years and come out the other side more bitter, more brittle, more afraid than when they started. Meanwhile, another person passes through one hard season and comes out with sharper instincts, firmer boundaries, and a level head. The difference was never the difficulty. The difference was what each of them did with it. If you are going to pay the price, at least collect the product. Do not let the same lesson bill you twice because you refused to study it the first time. If a deal collapses, find out why. If debt keeps returning, look underneath it at the habit that keeps inviting it. If you keep choosing people who let you down, look at what you overlooked in the beginning when it was still easy to see. If your temper takes over under pressure, find the belief that gave it permission. That is the work. Not this is hard, but what is this hard thing trying to teach me? Maybe it's patience. Maybe it's the nerve to say no. Maybe it's the humility to ask someone smarter than you for help. Once you can name it, the struggle has a direction. Before that, it was just weather. Here is where people get it wrong in the other direction. They start worshiping hardship itself, as if pain were proof of virtue. It isn't. There is nothing admirable about carrying a burden that serves no one, least of all you. A man can stay in an arrangement that is quietly destroying him and call it loyalty, when it's actually fear of the conversation required to leave. A man can work himself into the ground and call it ambition, when it's actually a refusal to plan properly. A man can absorb disrespect for years and call it patience, when it's actually a shortage of self-respect. Learn to tell these apart because they wear the same clothes. Ask plainly, what is this difficulty buying me? If the answer is skill, or freedom, or a sturdier business, or a healthier home, the price might be worth paying. If the answer is only more of the same chaos, on a loop, then the arrangement itself needs to be questioned, not your tolerance for pain. You are not obligated to suffer simply because suffering feels serious. The goal was never to see how much you could absorb. The goal is to become someone capable of building something that lasts. This is why a clear, definite aim matters more than raw effort. Purpose tells your struggle where to walk. Without it, hardship just scatters a man. He works hard without knowing what the work is for, sacrifices without being able to say what the sacrifice buys him, and eventually resentment moves in and makes itself at home. A man can absorb enormous effort when he understands why he's doing it. Effort with no destination, on the other hand, hollows a person out. So give your struggle somewhere to go. If you're pulling long hours, know exactly what those hours are building. If you're saving aggressively, know precisely what freedom that money is meant to purchase one day. If you're studying past midnight, know what capability you're trying to earn. If you're declining comfort today, know what tomorrow that discipline is protecting. This turns hardship into something you chose rather than something that happened to you. And choosing it gives you something else too, the right to reconsider, the moment the price stops matching the purpose. Loyalty to a hardship simply because you've already invested years in it is not wisdom. It's stubbornness wearing wisdom's coat. Sometimes the strongest thing a man can say is, "I've taken what this road had to teach me. I'm choosing a different one now." That isn't surrender. That's judgment. And judgment, ironically, is one of the things struggle is supposed to build in the first place. Ease conceals weakness. Pressure exposes it. A good year in business can hide sloppy spending. A peaceful season in a relationship can hide poor communication that was never actually resolved, just avoided. A forgiving boss can hide weak discipline in an employee for years. Then conditions shift, and suddenly the crack that was always there becomes visible to everyone, including you. Don't resent the exposure. Use it. When pressure shows you a flaw, you have just been handed information. And information, if you're willing to look at it honestly, becomes correction, and correction becomes strength. This is the hidden usefulness of adversity. It hands you data that comfort was never going to give you. Comfort tells you what feels pleasant. Pressure tells you what's actually weak. You need both. So when trouble arrives, don't just endure it, interrogate it. What broke first? What did I take for granted? Where was I careless? What should this become a permanent rule for going forward? That habit of extracting a principle from the wreckage is exactly what stops the same wreckage from happening again. A man who takes no principle from his hardship stays at its mercy indefinitely. He may escape one disaster only to build an identical one somewhere else, with new faces and the old habit still running the show underneath. Don't live in that loop. Turn the experience into a rule and the rule into architecture. Crisis rewards speed. Stability rewards patience. Crisis may call for tight control. Growth may call for delegation instead. Crisis may demand sacrifice. Prosperity may demand the wisdom to actually enjoy what was built. Your operating principles have to update as the conditions around you change. Self-examination doesn't get to stop just because things improved. In fact, improvement introduces its own dangers. A man who has struggled for years and finally finds success can become obsessed with protecting it. He starts saying no to every risk. He avoids anything new. He stops trusting capable people because he's afraid of what trusting them might cost. He becomes more cautious than wisdom actually requires. The struggle built fear instead of judgment. Don't let that happen to you. The entire point of experience is to make you sharper at evaluating risk, not incapable of ever taking one again. Every life worth living still requires some uncertainty in it. You cannot build anything new while demanding a guarantee that nothing can ever be lost. A naive man trusts too quickly. After he's been betrayed, he often swings hard into trusting no one at all. Neither position is mature. The wiser response is staged trust. Hand over small responsibilities first. Watch how the person actually behaves. Notice whether their words and their actions line up, and expand trust as the evidence accumulates. That way, betrayal builds discernment, not a mirror image weakness. Watch for overcorrection generally. A man who was once too generous swings into hardness. A man who once spent carelessly becomes afraid of every dollar. A man who once tolerated far too much starts cutting people off at the first small irritation. That isn't always growth. Sometimes it's just recoil. The pendulum has moved, but wisdom hasn't found the center yet. Find the center. Generosity paired with judgment. Spending paired with discipline. Boundaries held with proportion. Trust extended with evidence. Ambition balanced with rest. Courage paired with preparation. These combinations take more thought than the extremes do, because extremes require almost no thinking at all. But the man you're trying to become has to be able to hold both sides of each pair at once. That is what self-command actually looks like. Anger can be useful information. It can tell you a boundary was crossed, that something unjust happened, and it can supply real energy for action. But it should never become your identity. If you're still furious long after the lesson has become obvious, the person or event that hurt you is still quietly steering part of your life. Use the anger. Don't move in and live there. Some men spend years building success purely to prove one old insult wrong. That can generate impressive effort, but ask honestly who's really behind the wheel. If your entire ambition is chained to an old humiliation, the person who humiliated you still owns part of the direction you're heading in. Take it back. Let the insult start the engine if it has to. But then choose a destination that's actually worth your own life, not theirs. You should eventually be able to say, even if they never see what I build, I still want to build it. At that point, the struggle has produced independence instead of revenge, and independence expands a life where revenge only ever narrows it. The same logic applies to rejection. It can build persistence, or it can build a desperate need to keep proving your worth. Watch the difference closely. Persistence says, I still believe this goal has value, so I continue. The need to prove says, I have to win, because losing would mean they were right about me. That second motive turns every outcome into something dangerously personal. You need enough distance between your identity and your results to actually think clearly. A failed attempt should tell you something about the attempt. It should never be allowed to tell you who you are. A man who has genuinely suffered and genuinely learned from it usually becomes better at recognizing what someone else might be quietly carrying. That doesn't mean he lowers every standard or excuses irresponsibility. It means he remembers that strength tends to arrive in stages, and that memory can make him a far better leader. He corrects people without humiliating them. He teaches instead of simply condemning. He hands out responsibility in proportion to someone's actual readiness for it. But be careful here too. A man treated harshly sometimes concludes that harshness itself is what made him strong, and starts treating everyone else harshly in return. Ask honestly whether it was really the cruelty that built you, or the clear standard the cruelty happened to be wrapped around. If it was the standard, keep the standard and drop the cruelty. That is how one generation quietly improves on the one before it. You don't have to reproduce the entire painful environment in order to pass along the one lesson inside it that was actually useful. Not every problem needs your intervention. Not every insult needs a reply. Not every opportunity needs to be chased. Not every discomfort needs to be escaped immediately. A mature man is capable of leaving certain things alone entirely, and that too is a form of power. The immature man reacts because reacting makes him feel like he's still in control of something. The mature man asks first whether acting would actually serve any real purpose. Sometimes silence is the action. Sometimes waiting is the action. Sometimes simply refusing to enter a conflict is the most decisive move available. Struggle, handled well, teaches you exactly where your force actually matters. You may look back and notice that half the battles you fought over the years were really just battles for your ego. Someone disagreed, so you argued. Someone overlooked you, so you worked overtime trying to prove them wrong. Someone misunderstood you, so you spent days trying to correct the record. Ask honestly, how much any of that ever built? A man with a defined purpose cannot afford to spend his best energy defending his pride from every small challenge that comes along. Save your strength for the work that actually matters. And notice, too, that a market downturn is not a personal insult, a competitor's success is not an accusation, and someone else's disagreement is not automatically disrespect. Seeing that clearly frees up an enormous amount of capacity you didn't realize was being wasted. There is one more trap, and it catches serious men more often than lazy ones. A man becomes so focused on what the struggle is currently building in him that he starts treating every season of his life as mere preparation for some future life that hasn't arrived yet. I'll live once this lesson is over. I'll enjoy things once the pressure lifts. I'll rest once the goal is finally reached. And struggle quietly becomes the entire present, while actual living gets postponed indefinitely. Don't let growth become another excuse to delay life. The whole point of development was never to become permanently, endlessly prepared. It was to become more capable of living well right now, while also building wisely for what comes next. You can still laugh during a hard year. You can still love the people around you. You can still appreciate what remains standing, even while something else in your life stays unresolved. Joy can exist alongside responsibility. Rest can exist alongside ambition. Peace can exist alongside a problem you haven't solved yet. None of these are contradictions. They're actually signs that the struggle no longer owns the entire field of your life. A man who can stay human under pressure has built something significant, and that humanity is worth protecting on purpose. Eventually, the identity has to shift. The survivor looks backward at what he managed to endure. The creator looks forward at what can now be built from everything he learned along the way. Both identities can coexist for a while, but the creator eventually has to take the lead, or you stay quietly tethered forever to the very event that first shaped you, still trying to prove you're strong instead of actually using the strength you already have. If discipline was built in you, go build something with it. If patience was built in you, apply it to a long, worthy goal. If financial caution was built in you, turn it into reserves and wise decisions instead of permanent fear. If discernment was built in you, use it to build relationships strong enough to actually hold weight. This is how struggle finally pays forward, not merely by making you harder to hurt, but by making you genuinely more capable of creating value in the world. This is where the real final test quietly waits. When money was tight, you tracked every dollar. When opportunity was scarce, you prepared with real care. When nobody believed in you, you worked without applause and without complaint. When the road was hard, discipline was simply necessary, not optional. Then, eventually, circumstances improve. The pressure lifts. The danger that used to keep you sharp disappears. And right there, the very habits that carried you through everything can start quietly loosening without you noticing it first. Be careful. Don't require another crisis just to feel serious again. If struggle taught you discipline, keep it once life gets easier. If it taught you patience, keep it once you finally have options. If it taught you humility, keep it once people start praising you. If it taught you financial order, keep it once the account finally grows. A lesson is not truly learned until it can survive the absence of pain. That is the real final conversion. The point where you no longer need adversity standing over you like a stern teacher, because the standard has become entirely your own, carried inside you rather than imposed from outside. You will struggle either way. That part was never up for negotiation. What is up to you is whether you struggle with discipline now or with regret later. Whether you struggle to build financial order or struggle endlessly under financial disorder instead. Whether you struggle to build real courage or struggle beneath fear for years without ever naming it. Whether you struggle to tell the truth or struggle constantly to maintain a lie that keeps needing new lies to hold it up. There is no road with no price on it. There is only ever the question of what your particular price is actually purchasing. So choose with intention. Let the struggle purchase strength. Let it purchase wisdom. Let it purchase freedom and character, and a life that eventually grows larger than whatever difficulty first tested you. And then move forward without worshiping the thing that hurt you. Take the lesson, keep the principle it taught you, and leave the unnecessary pain exactly where it happened. You cannot avoid every struggle life has waiting for you, but you can decide, deliberately and repeatedly, whether each one makes you smaller or builds a man capable of eventually carrying something far greater. That decision, made consistently over enough years, becomes your character. And your character, in the end, is what determines whether the struggle was ever worth what it cost. So don't ask for an easier life. Ask first whether you have become a stronger man. Ask for the wisdom to choose your burden, the courage to carry it once it's chosen, and the discipline to let it build exactly what it was always capable of building. You never fully know yourself while things are easy. Comfort lets your intentions go untested. You say you're patient, then a delay arrives and proves otherwise. You say you're brave, then real risk shows up and you find out what you're actually made of. You say you're loyal to your principles, then profit offers you a shortcut and asks you to look away. The truth surfaces. Don't take offense at what it shows you. Use it. If you find cowardice, go train courage on purpose. If you find impatience, go practice restraint deliberately. If you notice that praise controls your decisions, go build some independence from it. The test didn't create the weakness. It only located it. And locating it is useful as long as you respond with honesty instead of denial. A man becomes genuinely dangerous to adversity the moment he no longer needs to protect his ego from what it reveals. He can simply say, "I handled that badly," and then improve. No theater, no excuse-making, no identity crisis. Just correction. That single habit alone will save you years. Plenty of men lose entire decades defending themselves against truths that, if accepted, could have made them formidable within months. Once you start treating struggle as raw material instead of punishment, your entire relationship with difficulty changes. The question stops being, why is this happening to me, and becomes, what can this be turned into? That doesn't make the pain vanish. It removes the helplessness that usually rides alongside it. A hard thing can still hurt and still be useful at the same time. Those aren't contradictions. You take pressure and turn it into capacity. You take a long wait and turn it into patience. You take rejection and turn it into sharper preparation. You take scarcity and turn it into financial discipline. You take responsibility thrown on you without warning and turn it into leadership. The event itself is just raw material. What you do with it is the product. This is exactly why two men can survive the identical setback and walk out with completely different futures. One keeps the wound, the other keeps the lesson. Be honest about which one you're carrying. Some men keep the wound because the wound gives them permission to stay small. I can't trust anyone because I was betrayed once. I can't take risks because I lost before. I can't start over because I failed in public. Each of those sentences hands the past control of the future. A stronger version says something different. I was betrayed, so now I read character more carefully. I lost money, so now I understand risk with more precision. I failed where people could see it, and I learned that failure doesn't end you. The event stays exactly the same. The conclusion is what changes, and the conclusion is what you actually build your next chapter on. Not every fight is worth your strength. A man can burn his best years proving a point that never mattered to begin with. Arguing with people he should have simply left, competing in arenas he doesn't even respect, chasing approval from people whose opinion was never worth chasing. Then he wonders why the effort feels hollow at the end of it. Your energy has a ceiling. Spend it on resistance that's actually worth something. Building the enterprise, repairing the relationship that deserves repair, mastering the craft, protecting your health, paying down the debt, developing your character. These fights produce something. Leave the pointless conflicts alone. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need to correct every misunderstanding. You don't need to answer every insult that comes your way. Some victories cost far more than they're worth, and a disciplined man knows exactly when to walk instead of swing. There's a version of pride that dresses itself up as persistence. A man stays in a failing partnership because leaving would require admitting he misread someone's character. Another keeps pouring money into a business that's clearly dying because he's already spent too much to face the truth. A third keeps chasing approval from people who have shown him repeatedly that their approval will never come. Each of these men will tell you they're persistent. Often they're simply refusing to revise. The rule was never stop. The rule is never abandon a worthy purpose just because the road turned difficult. Notice the word doing all the work there. Worthy. Strip that word out and persistence becomes a slow, self-inflicted wound. So examine the difficulty itself. Is it hard because growth is required, or hard because the whole structure underneath it is wrong? A new skill is difficult because you're still a beginner. That difficulty is probably useful. A dishonest partnership is difficult because trust was never actually possible there. That difficulty is a warning, not a test. Learn to tell them apart. That distinction is one of the harder lessons struggle has to offer, and it usually arrives later than the lesson of simple endurance. Human beings are remarkably good at normalizing conditions that should have been fixed instead. You can adapt to being broke. You can adapt to disrespect. You can adapt to exhaustion as a permanent state. None of that means those conditions are healthy. It only means you're skilled at tolerating them, which is a different skill entirely from thriving. Ask what the condition is actually building in you. If repeated disorder only teaches you to tolerate disorder, the lesson stopped halfway. You were supposed to build order, not a higher pain threshold for chaos. If scarcity only teaches you fear, that lesson is incomplete too. It was supposed to teach you discipline and capacity. If disappointment only teaches you suspicion, you were supposed to end up with discernment, not distrust of everyone. This is why the same category of problem tends to reappear across a man's life in different costumes. A different employer, the same conflict. A different partner, the same betrayal. A different city, the same restlessness. The scenery changes. The unexamined habit rides along quietly in the luggage. Don't change the scenery when the thing that actually needs to change is you. Ask honestly what keeps following you from one chapter to the next. That question is uncomfortable. Ask it anyway. There's a price you pay toward the goal, and then there's a price the struggle quietly extracts from everything around the goal. Your health, your family, your integrity, your capacity for peace. Worthy goals still require limits. I'll give everything sounds noble until everything starts including the very things that made the goal worth chasing in the first place. Some prices are worth paying for a season, longer hours for a stretch, living below your means while you build capital, tolerating discomfort while you learn a difficult trade. Fine. But some prices should never be on the table. Honesty for speed, every relationship for a title, permanent health for a temporary gain. A defined purpose is meant to organize a life, not consume it blindly. This is where ambition needs character standing right next to it. Ambition says, keep going. Character asks, at what cost? And what am I becoming in order to get there? Keep both voices in the room. Without ambition, struggle might produce nothing. Without character, it might produce something you can't live with once you have it. Under pressure, compromise always promises quick relief. Just this once, just until the crisis passes. Be careful with that sentence. Crisis has a habit of teaching permanent habits. If a small dishonesty solves one problem today, dishonesty gets easier to reach for tomorrow. If rage gets people moving today, rage becomes your default management style. If skipping your health produces one strong month, neglect starts to look, deceptively, like productivity. Ask what habit the solution is quietly training. That question alone will save you from trading a strategic future for a tactical win. You can win the argument and lose the trust. You can land the customer and destroy the margin. You can finish the project and damage the team so badly that the next project becomes twice as hard. Don't just measure whether you won today. Measure what today's win is building for the years after it. Some men spend half their lives hauling around difficulties they never actually chose. They inherit patterns, beliefs about money, work, sacrifice, and what a good man owes everyone around him, and then call the outcome fate. Look honestly at what you inherited. Maybe you were taught a good man always says yes, and now you're carrying everyone else's weight along with your own. Maybe you were taught money is always scarce, and every financial decision you make is still being made from fear instead of strategy. Maybe you were taught that work has to hurt to count as respectable, and now you distrust any method that's actually efficient. You are not required to preserve every burden that was handed to you by the generation before you. You can respect your father and still handle money differently than he did. You can honor your mother's sacrifice and still build stronger boundaries than she ever had the chance to. You can love your family and still refuse to pass an unnecessary hardship down to your own children. That is how struggle turns into a legacy instead of a repetition. You keep the strength the past gave you and set down the dysfunction that came bundled with it. Circumstances change constantly. Character is the part of you that travels with you regardless. Build patience, build courage, build financial discipline, build sound judgment, build the ability to recover quickly, build the habit of gathering facts before jumping to conclusions. These are portable forms of wealth. A man can lose his position and keep them. He can lose money and keep them. He can move into an entirely different field and carry them with him unchanged. This is why the right kind of struggle can make a man wealthier long before his bank account shows any evidence of it. It builds the assets that live inside him first. Some men become so proud of their own endurance that they get addicted to battle itself. They need an enemy. They need pressure in the room to feel alive. Peace makes them restless, so often without realizing it, they manufacture another conflict just to have something to push against. Don't let struggle become your permanent address. Its whole purpose is to build the capacity for something better, not to become the something itself. If financial hardship taught you discipline, use that discipline to build stability. Don't keep recreating scarcity, because scarcity is the only condition that makes you feel serious. If betrayal taught you discernment, use it to build relationships you can actually trust. Don't keep everyone at arm's length forever, simply because distance feels safer than closeness. If failure taught you preparation, use the preparation to finally act. Don't stay in permanent rehearsal because action still carries risk. Let the lesson graduate. One of the clearest signs that a man is actually growing is that he stops repeating the same classroom long after he's already passed the exam. Struggle does more than test what's already inside you. It also trains what will be inside you tomorrow. Every repeated response under pressure becomes a rehearsal, and rehearsal eventually becomes character. So you have to watch not only whether you survive the difficulty, but what kind of man is quietly being built while you do. A man can grow disciplined and bitter at the same time. He can grow strong and suspicious at the same time. He can grow successful and emotionally sealed off at the same time. Don't assume every quality that hardens is a quality that helps. Some qualities save you for one season and then become obstacles in the next. Suppose hardship taught you never to depend on anyone. That may have protected you for a while, but if it becomes permanent, it can leave you incapable of real partnership. Suppose betrayal taught you caution. Good. But if caution curdles into blanket suspicion, you'll end up punishing honest people for another man's crime. Suppose poverty taught you restraint. Good. But if restraint turns into a permanent fear of ever spending, scarcity is still quietly running your life, even after the number in your account has changed. The lesson has to mature past the emergency that first taught it. A soldier who's still fighting a war that ended years ago hasn't actually come home yet, even if his body is standing in the living room. Aim to build strength that can bend, not just strength that can hold. Adaptable strength can work hard without treating exhaustion as a badge of honor. It can extend trust without being naive about it. It can rest without feeling guilty for resting. It can admit uncertainty without losing its footing. It can ask for help without handing away responsibility. This kind of strength is harder to build because it runs on judgment rather than one blanket rule. Never trust anyone is a simple rule. Trust in proportion to the evidence requires actual thought every time. Never stop working is simple. Work according to purpose and recover according to need requires thought. Never quit is simple. Stay loyal to the purpose and change the method when the evidence demands it requires thought. Maturity is the process of trading crude rules for intelligent principles, and that trade is exactly what struggle, done well, is supposed to produce. It should sharpen your thinking, not just toughen your skin. Some men grow proud of being hard and start talking as if tenderness were weakness, patience were softness, and trust were naivety. Often what they're really describing is an old injury they never learned to govern. Don't turn a wound into a worldview. If a hard season taught you to protect yourself, fine. Protect yourself with intelligence, but don't let that protection quietly destroy the very things it was meant to preserve. A man can spend years building financial security and then find himself unable to enjoy a single quiet evening because part of him is still bracing for ruin. What exactly did the struggle build there? Money, maybe, but not freedom. And if it didn't build freedom, the lesson isn't finished yet. Another man can survive betrayal and come away able to recognize dishonesty at a distance. Good. But if he then rejects every trustworthy person before trust even has a chance to form, ask honestly whether what got built was discernment or simply isolation wearing discernment's name.